Today, we are going to look at the most horrifying moments in live TV history. From motorized fire doors that became guillotines, trapping veteran news anchors against studio floors, to parade floats where rotating platforms transformed children's dance performances into crushing death traps. It was May 14th, 2015, when the suburban festival grounds in Ohio prepared for what should have been a routine outdoor broadcast. The morning air carried the scent of wet earth from overnight rain that had soaked the temporary staging area. Gray clouds lingered overhead, casting a muted light across the production setup where crews worked to finalize equipment placement. Silas Wood, a 42-year-old freelance stage technician, moved methodically between the steel truss supports, checking connections with the practiced efficiency of someone who had assembled countless temporary stages. Known among production crews for his reliability and no-nonsense approach to following orders, Silas had spent 15 years in the industry, taking contract work that kept him traveling between festivals, concerts, and broadcast events. His weathered hands showed the calluses of someone who worked with heavy equipment daily, and his quiet demeanor masked an acute attention to structural details that had kept him employed when others struggled to find consistent work. The temporary stage structure stretched 40 feet across, supported by a network of steel trusses and anchor points that had been installed the previous evening. 4 rear anchor plates secured the framework to the ground, though 2 anchor points were secured using temporary fasteners approved by a site supervisor after the specified locking hardware failed to arrive on schedule. The overnight rain had saturated the soil beneath multiple anchor points, creating conditions that would have warranted inspection under normal protocols. However, the tight broadcast schedule left no time for post-weather assessments. As the live broadcast commenced, Silas positioned himself near the rear support structure, monitoring equipment as cameras began their choreographed movements. The camera crane operator executed a scheduled lateral sweep across the stage. Introducing sustained side-loading forces, the compromised anchors were not rated to withstand under saturated soil conditions. The additional stress caused one rear anchor plate to shift in the softened soil, and its bolt sheared free with a metallic snap that echoed across the staging area. The sudden loss of support created an immediate imbalance that transferred the full structural load to the remaining 3 anchor points. Within moments, the compromised anchors began pulling loose in sequence, each failure increasing the stress on the remaining connections. The rear truss tilted forward at a steep angle, and 2 critical cross braces snapped under the redistributed weight. A steel lighting beam weighing well over 100 pounds broke free from its mounting and fell directly onto Silas, striking him across the upper back and shoulders. The impact drove him face down onto the stage deck with tremendous force. Before he could react, a second beam collapsed from above, landing across his torso and pinning his chest against the wooden platform. The weight compressed his rib cage inward, preventing his lungs from expanding properly. Additional lighting fixtures and rigging hardware continued falling, striking his legs and fracturing both femurs. The live broadcast cameras captured crew members fleeing the immediate area, their movements forming a chaotic scene that viewers witnessed in real time. Emergency responders arrived within 12 minutes of the initial collapse, but the positioning of the fallen beams created a complex extraction scenario. The primary beam across Silas's torso could not be safely lifted without heavy machinery, which was not immediately available on the festival grounds. Paramedics confirmed that he had sustained traumatic asphyxiation from the chest compression, along with multiple spinal fractures from the initial impact. Silas Wood was pronounced dead at the scene at 11:47 a.m. The broadcast had cut to a wide static shot during the collapse, then went off air entirely as the severity of the situation became apparent. The festival was canceled that afternoon, and the remaining stage structure was dismantled under careful supervision. The subsequent investigation revealed that the combination of inadequate hardware, saturated soil conditions, and sustained lateral loading introduced during routine camera crane operations had created a cascading failure scenario. The official report cited multiple safety protocol violations and recommended mandatory post-weather inspections for all temporary structures. The production company faced significant liability claims. It was September 3rd, 2016. from the downtown high-rise district of a central Texas city basked under clear afternoon skies, with temperatures reaching 89 degrees Fahrenheit. The urban landscape stretched endlessly in all directions, punctuated by glass towers that reflected the intense sunlight. A gentle breeze moved between the buildings at street level, though it intensified considerably at higher elevations. Maynard Ford, a 35-year-old property marketing specialist, had built a reputation for opening his 14th-floor apartment to local media crews seeking impressive skyline backdrops. His outgoing personality and willingness to accommodate last-minute filming requests made him a reliable contact for lifestyle segments and real estate features. Maynard took pride in his modern apartment's panoramic views and had hosted numerous interviews over the past 2 years. The apartment building had completed cosmetic balcony renovations 6 months earlier, focusing on aesthetic improvements rather than structural upgrades. The renovation crew had installed new decorative railings that appeared sturdy but were anchored into the building's outer fascia rather than the load-bearing concrete structure beneath. While the installation passed a limited visual inspection, it failed to meet load-bearing requirements specified by municipal building codes. The broadcast crew arrived that afternoon to film a segment about urban living trends, planning to capture Maynard against the expansive city skyline. The production team consisted of a camera operator, sound technician, and field reporter, none of whom performed safety assessments of the balcony structure. The interview setup positioned Maynard with his back toward the railing. As the live segment began, Maynard spoke enthusiastically about downtown development projects while gesturing toward various landmarks visible from his balcony. His animated presentation style involved frequent hand movements and occasional backward leans against the railing for emphasis. The metal barrier appeared solid and had supported similar contact during previous filming sessions. During a particularly expansive gesture about the city's growth potential, Maynard leaned backward against the railing with approximately 180 pounds of body weight. The decorative fascia, weakened by months of thermal expansion and contraction, split along the anchor points under the sudden load. The railing posts pulled free from their mounting holes with a sharp cracking sound. Maynard fell backward over the balcony edge, dropping through open air from the 14th floor. His body rotated during the 140-foot descent, striking a canvas awning on the 8th floor that altered his trajectory and caused him to tumble head downward. The impact with the awning lasted less than a second and failed to significantly reduce his downward velocity before he continued falling. He struck the concrete pavement head first with tremendous force, followed immediately by his torso and legs. The impact occurred directly within the field of view of a street-level camera positioned to capture establishing shots. The collision caused immediate skull fracture, cervical spine separation, and massive internal organ rupture. The street-level camera was part of the live broadcast feed, and viewers saw the fall before producers terminated the transmission. Pedestrians walking nearby ran toward the impact site as the broadcast audio cut abruptly, though the video feed continued for several additional seconds before terminating. Emergency responders arrived within 8 minutes, but paramedics confirmed that Maynard had died instantly upon impact. The building management immediately evacuated all residents from units with similar balcony configurations, pending a comprehensive structural inspection. The investigation revealed that 12 other units had identical railing installations with inadequate anchoring systems. The renovation contractor became the subject of a criminal negligence investigation. The official report concluded that the decorative fascia installation had created a false sense of security while providing no actual structural support. New city ordinances required all balcony railings to be anchored directly into load-bearing concrete. It was November 24th, 2017, when downtown Missouri prepared for its annual holiday parade under overcast skies with temperatures around 38 degrees. Light winds carried autumn leaves and diesel exhaust from the staging area where floats lined up. Families gathered along sidewalks in winter coats, holding flags while children pointed excitedly at the approaching procession. Local businesses sponsored elaborate displays, drawing thousands of spectators who had arrived early to secure prime viewing spots. Graham Holt, a 9-year-old in a local children's dance group, stood on the third float wearing a festive costume that shimmered in the gray light. Known for being compliant and attentive, Graham followed choreography precisely and rarely deviated from rehearsed movements. His quiet demeanor and listening skills made him reliable, able to execute routines exactly as taught. Teachers praised his focus and willingness to help younger students learn their steps. The float featured a rotating decorative platform showcasing young dancers performing synchronized movements. A portable generator powered the mechanism through electrical cables across the deck. The installation was completed hastily by volunteers with limited experience, leaving cables unsecured and creating unnoticed hazards during the brief morning safety walkthrough. The platform sat 16 inches above the main deck, creating minimal clearance beneath its edge where steel framing supported the mechanism. This gap could trap objects or body parts during rotation. The mechanism operated at constant speed with no emergency stop controls accessible to performers, with the power shutoff located only at the generator mounted behind the float. As the parade began, Graham took position near the float center and began the opening sequence. Other children moved in formation while spectators cheered from packed sidewalks. The float rolled at 3 miles per hour, maintaining optimal viewing pace. Television cameras captured the colorful display for live broadcast coverage. During the second verse, Graham stepped backward and his ankle became entangled in a loose power cable that had shifted position. The cable wrapped around his ankle as he tried continuing the choreography, initially causing minor restriction. He worked through without breaking formation. When the platform completed its quarter turn, the cable tightened and pulled Graham toward the mechanism. He lost balance and fell, his costume becoming caught in the rotating platform assembly. As the float continued moving forward, the motor-operated platform remained in motion, tightening the cable and drawing more of his clothing into the rotating assembly with each turn. Graham's torso was pulled beneath the platform's edge, pinning his chest against steel framing. Continued rotation compressed his rib cage with increasing pressure, collapsing both lungs and preventing respiration. Internal bleeding began, as his chest and abdomen were crushed between moving and stationary components. The incident unfolded audibly on the live broadcast as the performance abruptly descended into chaos. The float continued rolling before the driver became aware and stopped the vehicle. Officials rushed to shut off generator power, but confusion over its location delayed shutdown for over 90 critical seconds. Graham was extracted once rotation stopped, showing no signs of respiration or consciousness. Emergency personnel reached the scene within minutes and attempted resuscitation procedures. However, Graham was pronounced dead from catastrophic crush injuries and traumatic asphyxia sustained during the incident. The broadcast ended immediately, and the remaining floats were diverted from the route. Investigation revealed safety violations, including inadequate cable management and absent emergency controls. New regulations required secured cables, minimum clearance standards, and mandatory inspections by certified technicians. The incident led to comprehensive safety protocol revisions, and Graham's family established a foundation promoting child safety and performances. It was February 8, 2018, when the local television studio in California prepared for its evening newscast under controlled lighting and climate systems. The studio maintained 72 degrees Fahrenheit, with multiple cameras around a central news desk surrounded by decorative set pieces. Bright tungsten lights created the familiar warm glow of professional broadcasting, while technicians made final adjustments to equipment. June Miller, a 54-year-old veteran news anchor with over 2 decades of broadcast experience, reviewed her script notes at the main desk, while makeup artists applied final touches. Known throughout the station for her calm professionalism and ability to handle breaking news with composure, June had built a reputation as someone who could maintain focus during technical difficulties. Her methodical approach had made her a trusted presence in the local market. The studio had recently undergone safety upgrades, including the installation of motorized smoke compartment fire doors designed to automatically seal sections during fire emergencies. These heavy steel doors used motor-assisted closure systems and were programmed to descend automatically when triggered by the building's alarm system. During recent maintenance work, technicians had improperly disabled the pressure reversal sensors that normally cause the doors to stop when encountering resistance. The evening's broadcast included a special segment featuring controlled flame effects as part of a cooking demonstration, requiring additional safety precautions and fire suppression equipment positioned nearby. However, The building's fire suppression systems had not undergone scheduled daily testing due to the live broadcast schedule. As the newscast began, June delivered opening headlines with characteristic poise, while cameras captured multiple angles of the studio environment. The cooking segment proceeded as planned, with small controlled flames demonstrating culinary techniques under what appeared to be safe conditions. During the demonstration, one controlled flame made contact with decorative fabric positioned too close to the cooking area. The synthetic material ignited rapidly, producing thick black smoke that began filling the immediate area around the news desk. The studio's smoke detection system activated within seconds, triggering automatic fire door closure sequence throughout the building. June immediately stood and moved away from the news desk as smoke continued spreading across the set. Behind her, one motorized fire door began its programmed descent from the ceiling, moving at approximately 6 inches per second toward the studio floor. The heavy steel door, weighing several hundred pounds, operated silently as it lowered. As June stepped backward to distance herself from spreading smoke, the descending door struck her across the upper back and shoulders. The impact forced her forward and downward, causing her to lose balance and fall face first toward the studio floor. The door continued its programmed descent without stopping, as disabled pressure sensors could not detect the obstruction. The lower edge of the descending fire door pinned her against the hard studio floor, its weight and continued assisted descent preventing relief once contact was made. The compression immediately restricted her airway and compromised cerebral blood flow, preventing effective breathing and circulation. Live cameras captured the emergency as crew members rushed toward the trapped anchor, attempting to manually lift the heavy door. Their efforts proved insufficient, while the assisted closure system remained engaged, and the door stayed firmly pressed against June's neck, despite multiple people attempting to raise it. Studio technicians worked frantically to locate power controls for the fire door system, but emergency procedures had not been clearly posted or practiced by the broadcast crew. After several minutes of searching, power was finally cut to the door motors, allowing the crew to manually raise the door and free June. June was unresponsive when removed from under the door, showing no signs of breathing or consciousness. Emergency medical personnel arrived within minutes and attempted resuscitation procedures, but she was pronounced dead at the scene. The official cause of death was determined to be traumatic neck compression and cerebral hypoxia, resulting from sustained pressure. The studio was immediately closed indefinitely pending a comprehensive safety investigation. The inquiry revealed that disabled pressure sensors had created a deadly hazard, and new regulations required multiple redundant safety systems for all motorized fire doors. The incident led to industry-wide reviews of emergency procedures and mandatory training for all broadcast personnel. It was July 19, 2018, when the closed test roadway in Nevada stretched across the desert landscape under a blazing afternoon sun with temperatures reaching 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The asphalt surface radiated heat waves that distorted the horizon, while the dry air carried the scent of sagebrush and hot concrete. The isolated facility featured a straight 2-mile section of track designed for high-speed automotive testing, bordered by sand barriers and ending with a concrete runoff wall. Brooks Day, a 29-year-old contract driver specializing in televised automotive demonstrations, prepared for his final run behind the wheel of a modified sports car equipped with aftermarket performance brakes. Known for his precise driving skills and calm demeanor under pressure, Brooks had built a reputation for executing challenging maneuvers safely while maintaining the dramatic visual appeal that television producers demanded. The demonstration vehicle featured high-performance brake components designed for short, high-intensity applications rather than sustained use. These racing-grade brakes generated extreme heat during operation and required adequate cool-down periods between runs to maintain proper function. However, the television production schedule had demanded multiple consecutive passes without sufficient time for the brake system to return to safe operating temperatures. Throughout the afternoon, Brooks had completed 6 demonstration runs, each involving acceleration to highway speeds, followed by emergency braking scenarios. The brake fluid temperatures had risen progressively with each pass, approaching the boiling point where the fluid would vaporize and create air bubbles in the hydraulic lines. This condition, caused by brake fluid boiling within the hydraulic system, would prevent the brake pedal from generating sufficient pressure to stop the vehicle effectively. The concrete barrier at the end of the test section stood 4 feet high and extended across the full width of the track, serving as a fixed boundary rather than a true high-speed stopping system. While effective for low-speed impacts, the barrier represented a potentially fatal obstacle for any vehicle approaching at highway speeds without adequate braking capability. As the final demonstration began, Brooks accelerated the vehicle past 90 miles per hour, while cameras positioned along the track captured the high-speed approach. The car moved smoothly down the centerline of the asphalt surface as it reached the predetermined speed for the braking demonstration. When Brooks applied the brake pedal at the designated marker point, the overheated brake fluid boiled within the hydraulic lines, introducing compressible gas that prevented effective braking. The vapor lock condition prevented the brake system from generating the hydraulic pressure necessary to engage the brake pads. Despite Brooks pressing the pedal to the floor, the vehicle failed to decelerate significantly. The car continued at nearly full speed toward the concrete barrier, covering the remaining distance in seconds. Brooks attempted to steer away from the barrier, but the limited width of the track provided insufficient space for evasive maneuvering at that velocity. The vehicle struck the concrete wall head-on with tremendous force. The front structure of the car collapsed inward upon impact, absorbing some kinetic energy but transferring massive deceleration forces to the passenger compartment. The steering column was driven backward into Brooks's chest, while the dashboard compressed inward, crushing his legs beneath the twisted metal. The sudden deceleration caused severe internal organ rupture. Live cameras captured the moment of impact and the immediate stillness that followed inside the cabin. Smoke and steam rose from the crumpled vehicle as emergency crews rushed toward the crash site. Emergency responders worked for over an hour to extract Brooks from the severely damaged vehicle using specialized cutting tools. However, the massive trauma sustained during the impact had caused fatal injuries, including severe chest compression, multiple organ rupture, and catastrophic blood loss. Brooks was pronounced dead at the scene by emergency medical personnel. The live television broadcast immediately cut to black without commentary, and the production crew was instructed to cease all recording activities. The footage was immediately pulled from all rebroadcasts and internal archives. The subsequent investigation revealed that the brake system failure resulted from excessive heat buildup during repeated high-speed demonstrations without adequate cool-down periods. New industry protocols were introduced requiring mandatory cool-down intervals, thermal monitoring of brake systems, and strict limits on consecutive high-speed test runs during televised demonstrations. It was August 14, 2015, in downtown Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A street demonstration had escalated into scattered violence by early evening. Police lines shifted block by block while local stations stayed live. The assignment looked routine, but the street geometry, crowd flow, and fading light were already limiting control. Rachel Keegan was 32 years old, a general assignment reporter for a regional affiliate. She covered zoning hearings, winter storms, and school closures. Live shots were not her specialty, but staffing shortages put her in the field. She was careful, methodical, and relied on preparation rather than presence. Her employer expected continuous coverage. Advertisers had bought the hour. Producers wanted proximity without obstruction. Rachel wore a station-branded vest and held a wired microphone connected to a shoulder camera. She had no personal security. The setup relied on police maintaining distance between the press and the moving crowd. The disturbance centered on a four-way intersection bordered by closed storefronts and a bus shelter. Trash fires burned intermittently. Traffic signals failed. Officers redirected groups south, then west, creating cross-currents. Rachel was positioned near a curb cut to keep the camera stable and the background readable. Later reviews confirmed police radio traffic included reports of bladed weapons taken from nearby shops. The information did not reach the field crew in real time. Producers asked for a tighter shot as the crowd compressed behind Rachel. She stepped half a pace forward to keep the lens clear of passing bodies. The live broadcast shows a man emerging from the left edge of the frame. He wore a hooded jacket despite the heat and moved against the prevailing flow. His right arm stayed close to his body. He closed the distance quickly, visible across a few frames of footage, using the bus shelter as cover. The first contact was not a shove. The blade entered the left side of Rachel's neck just below the jawline. Review found the angle downward and inward consistent with a short thrust. The camera jolted as the operator lifted the rig. Blood appeared immediately, dark and forceful. Rachel dropped the microphone. She staggered backward 2 steps and collapsed onto the pavement. The assailant disengaged and ran north, visible for several frames before leaving view. The broadcast lag continued for 12 seconds, capturing Rachel supine and motionless as blood spread beneath her head. Police in the intersection reached her within moments as part of crowd control. The area was secured and the feed was cut at the control room. Paramedics arrived from a nearby post, initiated airway control, and applied pressure. But there was no effective response. Transport followed immediately under protocols. The medical examiner documented a penetrating neck wound that severed the carotid artery and damaged the jugular vein. The blade also nicked the cervical spine. Rapid blood loss caused loss of consciousness within seconds. Death occurred shortly thereafter despite immediate medical care. The suspect was arrested later that night using footage from multiple cameras and transit video. The knife was recovered in a drainage grate along the escape route. Charges included first-degree intentional homicide. An internal review found no violation of policy but identified gaps. Live positioning placed reporters at choke points without escape lanes. Audio delays prevented field crews from receiving threat updates. The station revised protocols to require standoff distances and hard-cut rules during crowd compression. City officials revised media access during unrest, clarifying permits and standardizing buffer zones. Stations added broadcast delays, fixed exit lanes, and new training on crowd movement and lighting. The footage remains a reference for newsroom risk reviews, with policy updates circulated statewide within months. It was September 2, 2018, at Oceanside Pier, California. The segment aired live during a morning broadcast. Waves looked manageable on camera, sunlight flattening their edges. Framing suggested control, but shifting currents and tightening timing pushed a planned demonstration into open water risk before production adjusted positions, while on-air coverage continued. Evan Cole was 27 years old, a volunteer EMT from Vista, California. He worked a warehouse job during the week and took unpaid EMT shifts on weekends to gain experience. He trained after work, kept certifications current, and swam regularly at a local pool. Supervisors described him as steady on routine calls. He followed rescue training videos and sought exposure for future fire department applications. He did not hold ocean rescue certification. The live segment was sponsored by a regional safety nonprofit and a surfwear company promoting beach awareness. Producers planned a brief rescue demonstration for the broadcast. The intent was to show how responders assist a swimmer in trouble, with Evan acting as the simulated distressed swimmer during the segment. He agreed after brief coordination with on-duty lifeguards. He did not disclose a history of asthma, and no briefing addressed how open ocean conditions differ from pool or shallow water drills. That morning, a beach hazard statement was posted. The statement warned of lateral rip currents near fixed coastal structures. From shore, conditions looked manageable. Skies were clear, winds light, and sets evenly spaced. Despite the statement, the live segment proceeded. The setup placed Evan beyond the sandbar to create visible distance. This removed firm footing and limited exits once cameras were live. Viewers watched Evan enter the water and swim outward as planned. As he crossed the sandbar, the wave height increased slightly. Live overhead shots showed his position shifting sideways, though forward motion continued. The drift was subtle in the air and became clear only later when compared to fixed landmarks. The broadcast continued without interruption. When Evan turned back toward shore, the current strengthened. On the live feed, his body moved diagonally while his overall position drifted toward the pier. His arms and legs remained active. He angled away, but the lateral pull continued. A larger wave lifted him. His feet lost contact. The wave carried him forward and sideways at once. The impact occurred at chest height against the pier pilings, visible on the live feed. His head struck the piling at an angle. The contact caused immediate loss of muscle control. Purposeful movement stopped. He did not regain the surface under his own power. Whitewater passed over him, pushing his torso against submerged pier pilings. Additional waves crossed the same area before access was possible. When Evan was moved clear of the pilings, there was no voluntary movement. Assessment showed no spontaneous breathing. He was stabilized on scene and transported under beach medical protocols already active for the live segment. The feed continued briefly due to control room delay and safety procedures before cutting. Later review confirmed a single head strike followed by loss of motion. The medical examiner documented a fracture at the base of the skull. The injury damaged the spinal cord, stopping breathing immediately. Loss of consciousness occurred at impact. Water in the lungs showed drowning followed by respiratory arrest, not preceding it. The injury pattern matched wave-driven impact with a fixed object, not exhaustion, cramping, or a medical episode. Afterward, Evan's EMT unit suspended water-based demonstrations. Training materials were revised to address rip currents, pier hazards, and authority to halt activities during advisories. The case was added to recertification training without identifying Evan by name. The program issued a safety notice and permanently removed the segment. Local agencies reviewed beach broadcast policies. Warning flags now remain in place during surf advisories regardless of filming activity. It was July 18, 2016, in Cleveland, Ohio. A 6-alarm apartment fire burned upward through the morning, sirens steady, cameras already waiting below. Nothing suggested spectacle yet. From the street, the building remained intact as coverage continued. Marcus Levin was 34, a night shift HVAC technician who serviced grocery stores, clinics, and aging office buildings after hours. His work involved belts, coils, and keeping systems running quietly overnight. He usually worked alone, followed strict routines, and avoided attention. He lived alone in a mid-rise apartment and had mild asthma. His gray rescue cat was the reason he returned after the fire began. The fire started 2 floors below Marcus's unit due to an electrical failure inside a breaker panel. Smoke rose through the stairwell faster than flames, reducing oxygen on the upper floors first. By the time local stations cut to live coverage, firefighters were still staging outside and had not advanced hose lines to Marcus's floor. The live broadcast framed the building from street level. Anchors described smoke conditions while the camera held a wide shot of upper windows, a standard practice during multi-alarm fires to monitor fire spread. Residents were visible at several windows. The feed remained live and uninterrupted. Marcus entered the building during this window. Fire alarms were active. Some residents were evacuating downward, others hesitated, slowing clearance above the fire. Marcus reached his unit, closed the door, and placed towels at the base to slow the smoke. Inside, visibility dropped to inches. He searched briefly for the cat. Outside, the live camera continued rolling. Heat built behind interior walls. Window glass softened in frames. Thermal imaging used by firefighters later showed ceiling temperatures inside Marcus's unit rising rapidly, weakening fixtures and igniting rollover conditions. On the live broadcast, a figure appeared at a 6th-floor window. Viewers saw Marcus force the window open and lean outward, shirt over his face. Flames rolled across the ceiling behind him, visible through the glass. The camera did not zoom. It remained wide as producers monitored multiple windows at once. Conditions inside became unsurvivable. As fire spread across the ceiling, Marcus climbed onto the windowsill. Soot patterns later showed sustained heat exposure rather than a slip. Blistering on his skin matched radiant heat injury before the fall, indicating prolonged exposure and limited time for escape. With the camera already live, viewers saw Marcus standing fully outside the window. Seconds later, his body dropped straight down through the frame. The fall was captured in real time. Rotation occurred once during descent, consistent with an uneven push from the sill. He struck the sidewalk at a steep angle, with force transferring through his body almost simultaneously. The impact caused catastrophic trauma and occurred entirely within the live shot. The camera shook briefly before the feed was cut as control room staff confirmed what had happened. Fire crews already operating at street level reached the sidewalk as part of ongoing suppression. The feed was cut shortly after. Marcus showed no movement. Medical assessment found no breathing or circulation. The coroner documented catastrophic axial trauma, including fractures to the lower extremities, pelvis, spine, and skull. The head injury occurred at impact, causing immediate loss of brain function and instantaneous death. Investigators later confirmed the electrical origin of the fire and ruled the death accidental. The cat was found alive under a couch during overhaul operations. The live broadcast footage was later restricted, but it had already aired, capturing the moment a routine fire update turned fatal in real time. It was March 9, 2014, in Des Moines, Iowa. A live charity telethon filled the hall with applause and lights. Nothing appeared wrong. Schedules were tight, cues rushed, and safety decisions were quietly bent to keep the broadcast moving forward, despite visible warning signs today. Lily Moreno was 11 years old. She was small, quiet, and consistent in training. She practiced 4 nights a week at a neighborhood dance and acrobatic studio that emphasized repetition and discipline, not aerial work. Her mother cleaned dental equipment overnight. Her father managed freight schedules. Performing felt like Lily's contribution. She focused on preparation, sewing costume details by hand, and meeting expectations rather than standing out. The studio owner encouraged Lily to appear at a regional charity telethon for exposure. Local sponsors covered travel and costumes, not equipment or safety setup. The Civic Arts Center was familiar but outdated. Lily had only performed aerial routines at low heights over mats, using temporary supports. She had never worked from fixed overhead rigging and relied entirely on instructors who said the setup was safe. On the morning of the telethon, the children's segment was pushed back several times as the schedule shifted. Donation totals were rising, and producers wanted to keep viewers watching through the later blocks. The aerial rigging arrived a few hours before broadcast. It was mounted into a ceiling truss designed for static lighting loads, not the dynamic forces created by a drop sequence. No load test was conducted. No structural engineer reviewed the installation. The anchor point was treated as adequate without verification, despite time pressure and the absence of load testing. Lily was moved to the final slot in the children's segment. This decision was made to maintain audience interest before a major donation update. Backstage, Lily prepared as usual. She chalked her hands and checked the borrowed silks. The anchor point was hidden above banners and stage lighting. No secondary attachment or backup line was visible in the performance area. There was no safety net beneath the rig. By the time Lily stepped onto the stage, the cameras were already live. She climbed smoothly. The silks responded as expected. Her movements were controlled and practiced. She reached the planned height, secured her wrap, and paused briefly before beginning the release. The move was designed to drop and stop mid-air, using friction and body position to control descent. Instead, the anchor failed immediately. The attachment pulled free from the truss without warning. Wood fibers tore as the improperly rated hardware pulled free from the structure under sudden load. The failure happened faster than any correction could occur. Lily fell nearly straight down, head first with minimal rotation. There was no meaningful deceleration before impact. The fall was captured by multiple fixed cameras. Her head struck the stage first. The force compressed her neck and drove her skull downward. Her body folded forward on impact and came to rest where it landed. Blood pooled beneath her head within seconds. There was no visible movement after impact. The silks fell beside her as the detached hardware hit the stage nearby. The broadcast feed cut shortly afterward. Access to the stage area was restricted. Event staff followed standard procedures used for medical emergencies during live programs. Lily showed no response during the assessment. Medical examination later confirmed the injuries were unsurvivable. The base of the skull was crushed on impact. Severe brain swelling was present. The bones of the neck were fractured from vertical compression. Breathing stopped at the moment of impact. The medical examiner ruled the death immediate. The center closed that night for inspection. Investigators documented improper anchoring, lack of redundancy, and the absence of engineering oversight. Records showed no verification of load ratings for the installed rigging and no approval process for aerial equipment. The telethon raised significant funds but permanently removed aerial acts from future programs. Local safety requirements for school and community venues were revised within months. Lily's parents settled civil claims without public statements. Settlement funds were directed toward mandatory rigging inspections for regional auditoriums. Lily's name now appears on safety checklists used before performances, attached to procedures meant to prevent another fall. It was October 12, 2017, in a hillside barangay outside Cagayan de Oro, Philippines. A slow-moving tropical storm had parked over the region since dawn. Rain fell steadily, not violently, the kind that soaks the ground before anyone notices the danger building underneath. The area sat along a narrow road cut into a slope that had been reshaped years earlier to make space for small stores and homes. The hill above was a mix of clay soil and loose fill, held in place by shallow vegetation and aging concrete drains. Landslides were not unusual in the province, but this section had never failed before. The regional station sent a small crew to document flooding in low-lying neighborhoods. Maria Liza Santos, a 29-year-old reporter assigned to storm coverage, stood near a row of roadside stores that had pulled down their metal shutters. The live shot framed the road, the hillside, and water running through open gutters. The goal was to show conditions without moving into flooded zones. Several residents had gathered inside one corner store to stay out of the rain. The structure was a single-story concrete shell with a light steel roof, built directly against the slope. Its rear wall doubled as a retaining surface, though it had never been engineered for that role. Inside were Maribel de la Cruz, 41, Josephine Josie Ramirez, 38, and Ryan Flores, 15, all locals who lived uphill and had come down when the rain worsened. Rainfall records later showed accumulation exceeding safe limits for slope stability. Drainage channels above the road were clogged with debris, forcing water into the soil. The hillside began to saturate from the inside. There were no visible cracks or warning signs on the street. As the broadcast continued, the camera captured subtle movement along the hill face. A section near the top slumped first, sending a wave of mud downward. Within seconds, the entire slope released. Soil, rocks, and broken vegetation rushed toward the road, moving rapidly downslope. The slide struck the back of the store directly. The rear wall failed inward under pressure. The roof buckled and collapsed. The front of the structure remained briefly intact as the interior filled with debris. The camera view was partially obscured by dust and rain, but the collapse was clearly visible. De la Cruz, Ramirez, and Flores were buried beneath a dense mix of wet soil, broken concrete, and roofing material. The debris settled quickly, compacting under its own weight. No voids remained large enough to allow airflow. The road disappeared beneath mud, cutting off immediate vehicle access. Emergency crews already operating in the area redirected toward the site. Excavation was slow due to unstable ground and continuing rainfall. Hand tools were used at first to avoid triggering further collapse. The buried section was reached after significant material had been removed. Medical assessment found no signs of breathing or circulation in all three victims. There were no major external injuries consistent with high-speed impact. Clothing and airways were packed with fine soil. The victims died from asphyxia secondary to traumatic burial, caused by airway obstruction and thoracic compression. Post-mortem findings were consistent with mechanical asphyxia, where inhalation of soil and debris obstructed the upper airways. and external pressure on the chest wall prevented adequate lung expansion. This led to acute hypoxic respiratory failure, rapid loss of consciousness, and death within minutes due to oxygen deprivation. Santos and the camera operator were not physically injured. The live feed was terminated during the response and later reviewed by station management and authorities. The footage became part of the official incident record used by local disaster agencies. A geotechnical assessment concluded that prolonged rainfall, blocked drainage, and unreinforced slope modification caused the failure. The store had been constructed without a retaining wall or setback from the hillside. The slide originated above the structure and was not triggered by vibration or human activity at ground level. In the weeks that followed, the barangay cleared the area and relocated remaining residents from the slope. Local officials marked the zone as high risk and prohibited rebuilding along that stretch of road. The station revised its storm coverage guidelines to require a greater distance from hillsides and cut slopes during live reporting. It was July 14, 2019, at Lake Havasu, Arizona. The sun was low, flattening the water into a dull copper sheet. Boats drifted farther out than usual, their motors idling as people gathered near the familiar cliff. The ledge was known locally for close calls and minor injuries, but serious incidents there were rarely documented. Marissa Cole was 31. She managed a lakefront bar 6 nights a week and taught yoga classes in borrowed studio space on weekday mornings. Her life was orderly and practical. She paid rent on time, rotated staff fairly, and stretched every morning before sunrise. She streamed occasionally from her phone, usually for regulars who asked what the lake looked like or wanted proof she was really off work. This time was different. She went live specifically to record the jump, setting the phone so viewers could see the ledge and the water below. She didn't chase viewers or sponsorships. Her only pressure came from herself, from wanting a quiet, definitive moment before summer slipped away. She knew the cliff and had jumped it twice years earlier when the lake was deeper. That summer, seasonal water releases downstream lowered the lake by about 34 inches. Old painted warning stones were exposed and scattered, no longer reliable markers. No signage had been updated. Locals adjusted quietly. Visitors didn't. That evening, Marissa titled the stream, "One Last Jump Before Sunset." The words were casual, almost apologetic. A few dozen viewers joined. Some typed warnings about water levels. Others asked her to angle the camera. She shrugged, smiling, saying she'd done this before. Heat fatigue and familiarity lowered her caution. She didn't test the water. She didn't climb down to visually check the depth. She adjusted the phone strap around her wrist and stepped forward. Wind came off the lake in short bursts. Boats drifted closer, their occupants watching. A pair of swimmers below waved, assuming she was jumping feet first. No one shouted a warning. She raised her arms, leaned, and dove cleanly, body straight and confident. From the cliff, it looked controlled. Less than a second after entering the water, the crown and upper forehead of her skull struck a submerged limestone shelf. The impact abruptly halted forward motion. Her neck hyperflexed, and the cervical spine failed at the base of the skull. The fracture began at the hairline and radiated backward as the skull compressed against immovable stone. The phone camera filled with bubbles, then a dense red plume of blood from scalp and nasal vessels. There was no kick, no thrashing. Loss of muscle control was immediate. Her body resurfaced face down within seconds, carried upward by displaced air in her lungs. The camera stayed live, half submerged, recording ripples and muffled shouts. 2 swimmers reached her first, flipping her over. Her eyes were open. There was no blinking or tracking. Blood streamed from her nose and scalp into the lake. Emergency services were called immediately. Witnesses pulled her toward the rocks, but she never responded. Rescue crews arrived about 11 minutes later and halted resuscitation due to obvious fatal injuries. The coroner ruled the death catastrophic head trauma with brainstem disruption at impact. Drowning was ruled out. The stream ended when a responder removed the phone from her wrist and set it aside. The footage circulated quietly among emergency workers before anyone else saw it, used briefly for internal incident review. The bar Marissa managed closed for 2 days. Staff left flowers along the back dock where she used to sit after closing. Locals placed painted rocks near the cliff to mark the new water line, uneven but unmistakable. The county installed permanent depth signs the following month. They cited safety review requests prompted by responder footage. The lake stayed low. The cliff stayed the same. It was September 3rd, 2014. Downtown Cleveland was already warm by mid-morning, heat pressing against concrete and glass. The office tower on Euclid Avenue looked ordinary, its windows dulled by years of grime. Donna Whitlock arrived early, secured her harness, checked her lines, and started streaming before the city fully woke. Donna was 42, a union window cleaner with 17 years on high-rise crews across northern Ohio. She had started in her 20s, following an older cousin into the trade because it paid steadily and didn't require college debt. She was careful, methodical, and known among co-workers for refusing shortcuts. At home, she was a single mother raising a teenage son who had begun asking what her job actually involved. The live stream wasn't for fame, it was for him. She worked for a regional maintenance contractor that handled multiple downtown properties, many of them aging towers kept operational through deferred repairs. Inspection logs existed, but fixes were often postponed until failure. Dana understood the risks. She also understood pressure. Building management wanted the windows finished before a prospective tenant walked through later that week. Her union rep had raised concerns. The job went forward anyway. High-rise window cleaning depended on redundant rigging, a primary steel cable, and a secondary safety line anchored to rooftop davits. That morning, inspections showed corrosion and internal fatigue on the main cable. The backup line, recently reinstalled, had excess slack, reducing its ability to arrest a fall safely. The assignment that day involved the upper 20 floors, where exposure to wind and heat was more pronounced. Conditions were clear, but overnight thermal expansion had increased tension at the rooftop davits. As Dana descended, she felt a mild but unfamiliar sway in the platform when she shifted her weight. She paused, adjusted her stance, and continued working, the movement settling but not fully disappearing. Minutes later, as she repositioned again, the primary support cable failed. The break occurred at the anchor sleeve, where corrosion had weakened the internal strands beyond visible detection. The cable snapped without warning. Donna dropped suddenly, falling just over 3 floors before the secondary line engaged. Because the safety line carried excess slack, the arrest was abrupt. Her fall stopped within roughly 18 inches, forcing the line across her lower rib cage and abdomen under full body weight. The line did not cut. Instead, it acted as a rigid fulcrum, violently bending her torso forward. Her thoracic spine fractured and dislocated, severing the spinal cord and immediately eliminating muscle control and respiration. Her camera struck the glass and scraped downward before stopping. The live stream showed her body hanging motionless in the harness, folded forward over the line. There was no movement, no attempt to grab the rigging. Her head remained sharply flexed, consistent with catastrophic spinal disruption rather than laceration or decapitation. Emergency services were called within seconds. Another cleaner on a lower platform shouted her name but got no response. Emergency services arrived approximately 8 minutes later. Fire crews raised an aerial ladder, but there was no sign of life when they reached her. The coroner later explained the injuries in plain terms. The abrupt stop broke Dana's spine at the mid-chest level. The spinal cord was completely severed, eliminating breathing and voluntary movement instantly. Loss of consciousness would have occurred within seconds due to neurological shock. There was no evidence she experienced prolonged pain after the arrest. Internal organs showed displacement and bruising from extreme compression, but there were no defensive injuries and no signs of struggle. Death was immediate. The building closed for the rest of the day. Inspectors documented the corroded primary cable and improperly tensioned secondary line. The live stream footage, synced with security camera timestamps, showed the exact failure sequence from cable snap to arrest point. Months later, Donna's son testified in a civil case using the building's own maintenance records. The footage was entered as evidence. The tower eventually replaced all exterior rigging and revised its inspection intervals. It was March 22, 2019, in Boise, Idaho. Melting snow left damp concrete and cold air drifting into open garages. Kayla Jensen's garage door stood half raised for light. The quiet afternoon held only the scrape of rubber plates, a bar settling into steel, and the low hum of her phone streaming nearby. Kayla was 19, a first-year community college student balancing general education classes with part-time shifts at a local sporting goods store. She had found powerlifting during her senior year of high school after a physical therapy referral for a knee injury. The structure appealed to her. Numbers were honest. Bars either moved or they didn't. She trained alone most evenings, following programs she downloaded from small competitive lifting forums. Her stream existed for accountability more than attention. She averaged fewer than 20 viewers, most of them other amateur lifters checking her form between their own sets. She was registered for her first amateur meet scheduled 6 weeks out. Her coach, a volunteer strength instructor at the college gym, had advised conservative progression. That week, Kayla was behind. Midterms had cut into training time. She had also recently accepted a small discount partnership with a local supplement shop that reposted her clips, adding quiet pressure to show progress. The garage setup was basic: a steel power rack bolted to the slab, a barbell she'd owned since high school, mismatched plates collected over time, and no safety pins or spotter arms installed inside the rack. That afternoon, Kayla planned to test a new top weight on a back squat, not a deadlift. The temperature outside hovered just above freezing, making the concrete floor slick with condensation. She lifted without a spotter, something she had done dozens of times before. While loading the bar, she miscounted one side, adding an extra 5-pound plate to the left. The imbalance wasn't obvious once the collars were tightened. In chat, viewers noticed the load looked heavy and began counting reps aloud as she ducked under the bar. She unracked cleanly, the bar resting across her upper back just below the base of her neck, and stepped backward into position. The descent was controlled. At the bottom of the squat, her hips slowed. As she drove upward, her legs shook. At full extension, fatigue set in. The uneven load caused the bar to rotate and roll upward along her back. As she tried to recenter it, the bar slipped high and struck the back of her head at the base of the skull. Her neck snapped backward under the combined force of the shifting bar and her own body weight. The sudden hyperextension fractured the upper cervical spine instantly. Kayla dropped straight down. Her knees buckled and her torso collapsed without resistance. Her eyes remained open, unfocused. The bar slid free and crashed onto the concrete, bouncing once before settling. The sound echoed through the garage. There was no gasp, no attempt to brace, no movement afterward. The stream continued. Viewers typed her name repeatedly, assuming a failed rep. One viewer noticed her chest was not rising. Another suggested calling emergency services. A neighbor across the street, drawn by the sound of the dropped bar, stepped into the garage and froze. He called 911 within a minute. Paramedics arrived approximately 9 minutes later, finding no pulse and no spontaneous breathing. Given the obvious fatal trauma, resuscitation was not attempted. The coroner's report later listed the cause of death as a high cervical spine fracture with spinal cord transection. The injury occurred at the C2 level, immediately stopping breathing and consciousness. Death was instantaneous. There were no defensive injuries and no signs of prolonged suffering. The footage was reviewed by campus safety officers and her coach. The bar position, uneven loading, and absence of safety equipment were clearly visible on video. The college gym updated its policies the following semester, requiring spotters or safety pins for all heavy barbell lifts. Kayla's coach used still frames from the video during safety briefings, with her parents' permission, as a straightforward example of how quickly control can be lost and how little margin exists when lifting alone. It was November 18, 2020, in Ybor City, Tampa, Florida. The night was warm and crowded, music leaking from bars as pedestrians drifted between bright storefronts and unlit side streets. Luis Moreno walked with a phone strapped to his chest, speaking casually, unaware the live stream was approaching an irreversible end. Luis was 29 and worked delivery jobs for restaurants and pharmacies across Tampa. Streaming night walks supplemented his income and required little more than a phone, a stabilizer, and mobile data. He averaged 50 to 70 viewers, mostly regulars, and accepted small donations that allowed chat to choose his route. He avoided confrontation, crossed streets early, and ended streams if anything felt unsafe. A habit formed after witnessing minor altercations during earlier walks, keeping costs low and viewers comfortable during late hours most nights after work. His stream relied on real-time engagement, with donations steering his route block by block. A standard 2-second delay filtered technical issues, but offered no real-world protection. He carried spare batteries and monitored signal strength, following platform rules to maintain small sponsorships that provided visibility, not safety. That evening was busier than usual due to a midweek event. Partial street closures funneled pedestrians into narrower routes, increasing foot traffic in some areas while leaving others unexpectedly empty. Earlier police advisories warned of disturbances after dark, including reports of armed robberies several blocks away. Luis mentioned the crowd on stream but continued, trusting familiarity with the area and the presence of nearby businesses still open with staff inside as a perceived buffer. As tips came in, viewers steered him toward quieter scenery. One donation redirected him down a side street with broken lighting and closely parked cars. Luis hesitated briefly, scanned ahead, and proceeded. The stream delay meant multiple warnings typed in. Chat had not yet reached his screen as he entered the darker block, where his footsteps echoed louder than the fading music behind him. City surveillance cameras covered the intersection ahead. A man stood partially hidden between parked vehicles, positioned near the driver's side door of a sedan, watching Luis approach. Several bystanders later reported noticing movement but assuming it was someone waiting for a ride. Luis continued narrating, eyes forward, pace unchanged as ambient noise dropped suddenly, and the street felt abruptly empty despite nightlife continuing less than 2 blocks away. The man stepped out and raised a handgun. 2 shots were fired in rapid succession. The first round entered Luis's upper right chest, puncturing the lung and causing it to collapse immediately, preventing normal breathing rather than stopping airflow entirely. The second struck the front of his neck, lacerating major blood vessels and destroying the airway. The sharp reports caused the camera to jolt violently as his body reacted reflexively. Luis dropped to his knees. He attempted to inhale, but could not draw air past the damaged airway. Blood poured from his neck and mouth, soaking the front of his hoodie. His hands moved weakly toward his throat, then slipped. He fell forward onto the pavement, camera still chest-mounted. The frame showed concrete inches from his face as blood spread rapidly beneath him. Muscle movement diminished within seconds as oxygen deprivation and blood loss progressed, and audio captured wet, choking sounds fading out. People on the next block heard the shots and ran toward the intersection. A nearby woman called emergency services within seconds. The shooter fled on foot. The stream continued briefly, broadcasting uninterrupted until the phone battery depleted. Police arrived approximately 4 minutes later, followed by paramedics, who found no intact airway to secure and severe external bleeding that could not be controlled in the field. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner determined death resulted from rapid hemorrhage combined with complete airway destruction. Consciousness likely lasted between 10 and 15 seconds, consistent with witness accounts and footage. The chest wound alone may have been survivable with immediate trauma care, but the neck injury made survival impossible. Investigators used surveillance footage, dispatch timestamps, and archived chat logs to reconstruct the route. Viewers recognized the street from earlier streams and provided corroborating details. The shooter was identified and arrested within days after coordinated public tips. It was April 9th, 2019, in downtown Newark, New Jersey. The morning rain had thinned to a steady drizzle, enough to darken pavement and soften sound. Traffic moved slowly. Umbrellas clustered near storefronts, and most people watched their footing without thinking about what might be missing beneath it. Tanya Brooks was 34 years old and worked as a retail visual merchandiser for regional clothing chains. Her job involved styling mannequins, coordinating seasonal displays, and advising store managers on layout. She streamed short city walks to get real-time feedback on outfits she assembled herself, treating it like a moving fitting room. She averaged a few dozen viewers, mostly other retail workers and fashion students. Tanya was cautious by nature. She avoided nightlife streams and never chased shock content. The platform occasionally promoted her streams under a local lifestyle category, and a small boutique brand had begun sending her discounted accessories in exchange for tags. Her setup was simple: a phone on a handheld stabilizer, a portable battery, and earbuds. She walked familiar routes and stayed aware of traffic signals and crowds. That afternoon, she planned a short walk between 2 shopping corridors, showing a rain-ready outfit she had assembled for spring inventory. The weather made the stream slightly riskier than usual, but she considered it manageable. Earlier that day, a municipal utility subcontractor had removed a manhole cover to access underground lines and left the site unattended. The opening was approximately 24 inches in diameter and over 12 feet deep. No barricades or cones were placed. Light rain collected on the sidewalk, turning patches of concrete into reflective pools. The open manhole blended into the dark surface, appearing no different than shallow water. Tanya read chat as she walked, responding to comments about fabric texture and shoe choice. Several viewers typed warnings about the dark patch ahead, noticing the absence of a visible rim or cover, but the stream delay meant she did not see them. As she approached the intersection, foot traffic thinned. A bus passed, spraying water across the curb. Her stabilizer dipped slightly as she adjusted her grip. She stepped forward mid-sentence, and her leading foot found no surface, causing her center of gravity to tip forward. She vanished from the frame in a straight vertical drop without any sign of slipping or scrambling. The phone dropped with her. The stream recorded a rapid rush of air followed by a single dull, hollow impact, echoing up the shaft as her body struck the concrete base head first with her neck flexed forward. The camera landed tilted against the wall, still streaming. Rainwater dripped steadily into the opening. Tanya did not move or make any sound. Witnesses called emergency services within seconds, reporting a fall into an open manhole with no movement visible below. The live stream continued uninterrupted, showing the concrete wall and falling rain. Emergency responders arrived approximately 5 minutes after the call. Firefighters descended using a ladder and confirmed she had no pulse. Paramedics performed a rapid assessment but did not initiate resuscitation due to the extent of visible head trauma. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The footage, combined with nearby traffic cameras, documented the fall clearly from start to finish. The medical examiner later reported extensive skull fractures involving the frontal and parietal bones, caused by direct impact with the concrete base. The force caused immediate brain swelling and massive internal bleeding incompatible with survival. Death occurred on impact, with no evidence of purposeful movement after the fall. The manhole was sealed that evening. Investigators confirmed it had been left open during routine maintenance with no barriers or warnings. The city later settled with Tanya's family, and the contractor's license was revoked after safety violations. Temporary barriers became mandatory for similar work sites. It was August 15, 2016. 23-year-old Shane Nash attended an after-work gathering at a downtown Chicago rooftop bar. Nash worked as a junior coordinator at a local marketing firm and had built a social media following of over 5,000 by posting increasingly daring photographs from elevated locations around the city. His outgoing personality and constant pursuit of online validation had become well known among his colleagues. That evening, Nash arrived at the 40-story building with 2 co-workers from his office, both in their mid-20s. The group had been celebrating a successful campaign launch earlier that day. Nash had previously scouted the rooftop's layout and identified a narrow concrete ledge running along the exterior edge of the rooftop, just beyond the main safety barrier, leaving minimal footing. The ledge surface remained damp from afternoon rainfall, and elevated winds were typical at that height. Nash's co-workers had previously expressed concerns about his barrier climbing photography, but he consistently brushed off their warnings, insisting he understood the risks involved. His social media accounts featured dozens of similar high-altitude photographs taken from various Chicago skyscrapers and bridges over the previous 18 months. Nash had consumed approximately 3 alcoholic beverages over the 2-hour gathering and did not appear visibly impaired to his companions. The rooftop bar's staff had posted standard safety notices prohibiting climbing on barriers, but enforcement relied primarily on patron compliance rather than active monitoring. During the golden hour period, Nash climbed over the safety barrier and positioned himself on the narrow ledge with his back toward the 400-foot drop. One co-worker held his smartphone to capture a silhouette shot against the city skyline. Security cameras from the building's exterior monitoring system recorded the sequence from multiple angles. A sudden gust of wind coincided with his movement, tugging at his loose button-down shirt and disrupting his balance as he shifted his weight on the damp, narrow ledge. The security footage showed his body making contact with an exterior architectural feature partway down the building before continuing the fall to the sidewalk. Nash's co-workers immediately called 911 as building security and bystanders moved to street level. Emergency medical services arrived within minutes and pronounced him dead at the scene. The fall was unsurvivable. Authorities secured the area and began interviewing witnesses. The incident was documented by multiple security cameras and witnessed by dozens of pedestrians below. Nash's final social media post went live shortly after the accident, when a scheduled posting reminder on Nash's account resulted in the final photograph, taken moments earlier, being uploaded shortly after the incident. Building management conducted a comprehensive review of rooftop access policies following the incident. Additional safety barriers were installed, extending the height of existing structures by 18 inches. Warning signage was placed at multiple locations, emphasizing the prohibition of climbing over safety barriers. The family pursued civil claims against the building operators and bar management. Any settlement reached was not publicly disclosed. The case concluded with the coroner's office determining the cause of death as blunt force trauma consistent with a fall from height. Toxicology results showed blood alcohol levels below the legal driving limit. Security footage was retained and cited in the investigation. The bar reaffirmed compliance with rooftop safety regulations, while city officials reviewed similar venues and ordered targeted inspections. Nash's employer later introduced a social media safety policy. His account remained active for months before being deactivated by family. The investigation file included witness statements from both co-workers, bar staff, and multiple pedestrians who observed the fall. Building engineers confirmed that the original safety barriers met code requirements. The case was closed after 6 weeks with no criminal charges filed. It was March 22, 2017, when 19-year-old Sadie White attempted a viral social media challenge near active railroad tracks in Riverside, California. White was a college sophomore studying communications while working part-time at a local coffee shop. Her competitive personality and desire to be first among her peers to complete trending online stunts had previously led her to participate in various internet challenges. White had been following a dangerous trend where participants positioned themselves between active railway tracks while filming. The challenge had gained millions of views across multiple platforms, with participants attempting to capture dramatic footage of approaching trains. White selected a freight corridor that ran behind her apartment complex, believing she had adequately studied the train schedules. Over several weeks, White had observed passenger trains using the tracks and timed their movements. However, she failed to account for freight trains, which operated on different schedules and traveled at significantly higher speeds than the commuter services she had monitored. On the afternoon in question, White recruited her 17-year-old neighbor, a high school student, to film the stunt. The neighbor positioned himself safely off the track bed using his smartphone zoom function to capture the footage from approximately 50 feet away. White had planned to lie between the rails and film herself with an approaching train in the background. White positioned herself low between the steel rails as a freight train approached the area. The locomotive was traveling at approximately 55 miles per hour, standard speed for that section of track. Train horns sounded as the locomotive rounded a curve several hundred feet from White's position. According to the witness account provided by her neighbor, White appeared to misjudge both the train's speed and the time required to clear the tracks safely. The approaching locomotive created increasing air displacement and track vibration, which intensified as it drew closer. White attempted to stand and step away from the rails, but lost her footing on the uneven ballast stones. The clearance between White and the passing train was insufficient. She was struck by the locomotive and adjacent rail equipment as the train passed. The train crew immediately initiated emergency braking procedures, but the fully loaded freight train required over a mile to come to a complete stop. White's neighbor immediately called 911 from his position off the track bed. The smartphone footage captured the initial setup and approach, but was terminated when the neighbor dropped the device during the incident. Railroad dispatch was notified simultaneously by the train crew, who reported the collision via radio communication. Emergency medical services arrived within 12 minutes of the initial call. White was pronounced dead at the scene. The coroner determined the cause of death as multiple blunt force trauma consistent with a high-speed train collision. Railroad police conducted a comprehensive investigation of the incident. The smartphone footage recovered from the scene provided crucial evidence regarding the sequence of events leading to the collision. Witness statements from the neighbor corroborated the timeline and circumstances surrounding White's decision to attempt the challenge. Following the incident, the railroad company increased security patrols along residential sections of the corridor. Additional no trespassing signage was installed at multiple access points near apartment complexes. The company also implemented enhanced horn protocols for areas with known pedestrian activity. Authorities used the case to develop school outreach programs on social media safety. White's family later formed an educational foundation addressing viral challenge risks. Railroad police closed the investigation without charges, classifying the death as an accident resulting from voluntary trespassing on active railway property. The smartphone footage was retained as evidence and referenced in subsequent safety presentations. It was July 4, 2023, when 26-year-old Joel Wood attempted a live-streamed cliff jump at Lake Tahoe on the Nevada shore. Wood worked as a freelance fitness trainer and had built a social media following of 3,000 subscribers by performing extreme athletic stunts. His confident demeanor and muscular build made him popular among younger viewers who admired his approach to physical challenges. Wood had planned a 4th of July live stream from a granite cliff formation rising approximately 75 to 85 feet above the water, depending on seasonal lake levels, known locally for dangerous jumping conditions. Despite his athletic background, Wood had no formal diving experience and had only practiced jumps from much lower heights. The cliff area featured posted warning signs about submerged rocks and variable water depths. Wood arrived at the location during the afternoon with a small group of friends in their mid-20s. The group included 2 recreational athletes and a part-time videographer who frequently collaborated on Wood's content. Wood had consumed 2 beers over the previous hour and appeared steady and coherent. The cliff jumping spot attracted holiday crowds with numerous boaters and kayakers positioned throughout the cove area. Wood had scouted the location during previous visits, but had never attempted a jump from the full 85-foot height. Wood positioned his smartphone on a stable rock formation to capture a wide-angle view of the jump. He initiated a live stream that quickly attracted several hundred live viewers as word spread through his follower network. The phone's camera framed both the cliff edge and the water below. Wood announced his intention to perform a front flip, a maneuver he had observed in professional diving videos but had never attempted from a significant height. He took a running approach from approximately 15 feet back from the cliff edge, building momentum for the rotational element. The smartphone footage captured Wood's takeoff and initial rotation. His inexperience with timing and body positioning became evident as he over-rotated during the 85-foot descent. Instead of entering the water feet first, he entered head first at a steep downward angle. Wood's head and neck struck a submerged granite shelf just below the surface, where water depth varied between 12 and 15 feet, already dangerous at that height and further compounded by the rock formation. The impact caused catastrophic cervical spine injury, immediately paralyzing him and preventing any self-rescue, while natural buoyancy kept his body briefly at the surface. A kayaker positioned roughly 100 yards from the impact site observed the jump and the immediate aftermath. After witnessing the impact, the kayaker paddled toward Wood's location and reached him within several minutes, finding him floating face down, unresponsive, and unable to move. The kayaker, assisted by 2 nearby boaters, pulled Wood toward shore while attempting to keep his head and neck as still as possible. Emergency calls were placed simultaneously by multiple witnesses, both on the water and watching the live stream remotely. The live stream continued recording throughout the rescue attempts until the phone's battery expired. Emergency responders arrived from the nearest access point, with the remote cliff location resulting in a 22-minute response time. Paramedics found Wood in cardiac arrest with severe head and neck trauma. Advanced life support was initiated but unsuccessful. He was pronounced dead at the scene, with the cause of death determined as fatal cervical spine trauma, with drowning as a contributing factor. The live stream recorded approximately 12 minutes of footage, providing investigators with a complete timeline, supported by witness statements from nearby boaters. The footage was later removed from public access and preserved solely for investigative purposes. Authorities later installed additional warning signage and increased ranger patrols at known cliff jumping sites. The platform reviewed high-risk content policies. Investigators ruled the death accidental, resulting from voluntary participation in a hazardous activity. It was June 12, 2016, when 24-year-old Levi Fox attempted to film a pool stunt at a rental house party in Miami, Florida. Fox worked part-time as a DJ and social media content creator, known for his charismatic personality and willingness to perform elaborate party tricks for online content. His energetic approach to entertainment had earned him 5,000 followers across multiple platforms. Fox had been hired to provide DJ services for a house party at a luxury rental property featuring a large backyard pool and extensive outdoor lighting. The homeowner, a tech worker in his late 20s, had mentioned that some of the pool lighting had been acting intermittently, but had not arranged for a professional electrical inspection. The party attracted approximately 40 guests, mostly young professionals in their 20s and early 30s. Fox saw the malfunctioning underwater LED lights as an opportunity to create unique video content featuring dramatic lighting effects. He had no knowledge of electrical safety protocols around water features. Fox planned to film himself diving into the illuminated pool while holding a waterproof action camera. He positioned his smartphone on a poolside table to capture a wide-angle view of the stunt. The phone was angled to frame both the pool deck and the water surface. The pool's electrical system was later found to have bonding deficiencies and missing or malfunctioning GFCI protection, creating hazardous stray voltage conditions in the water. This condition was not visible to party guests and may have existed intermittently for days or weeks without detection. The intermittent lighting behavior was a symptom of the underlying electrical fault. As the party reached its peak energy during the late evening hours, Fox announced his intention to perform the pool dive. Guests gathered around the pool area to watch and record additional footage. The underwater lights flickered intermittently, creating an eerie glow that Fox found visually appealing. Fox entered the water and immediately experienced involuntary muscle contraction consistent with electrical shock. The current passing through his body prevented normal muscle control, making it impossible for him to swim effectively or call for help. He remained near the pool's entry point, partially submerged and unable to control his movements. Party guests initially interpreted Fox's jerky movements as part of his planned performance. Several seconds passed before anyone recognized that he was in genuine distress. The smartphone footage captured the initial entry and the delayed recognition by witnesses that something was wrong. A guest tested the water with a pool skimmer pole and felt electrical tingling, prompting immediate shouts to cut the power. The homeowner ran to the electrical panel and shut off the pool circuit breaker. Once the power was disconnected, several guests pulled Fox from the water and began CPR attempts. Emergency services were called simultaneously by multiple party attendees. The smartphone continued recording through the initial rescue attempts until a bystander moved it to provide better lighting for responders. County Fire Rescue arrived within 11 minutes of the initial emergency call. Paramedics found Fox in cardiac arrest and continued advanced life support measures while transporting him to a local hospital. Despite resuscitation efforts, Fox was pronounced dead approximately 45 minutes after the initial incident. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death as drowning, with electrical injury listed as a significant contributing factor. County electrical inspectors examined the pool system and documented multiple electrical code violations involving the pool lighting circuit, bonding, and protective devices. The faulty bonding and absent GFCI protection had created the dangerous electrical condition in the water. The smartphone footage provided investigators with a timeline of events and evidence of the electrical hazard's effects. Witness statements from party guests corroborated the sequence of Fox's entry into the water and the power disconnection procedure. The property owner faced civil liability and code enforcement penalties related to the electrical violations. County prosecutors reviewed the case, but determined that the death resulted from negligent maintenance rather than criminal conduct. Following the incident, county authorities announced targeted electrical inspections of rental properties with swimming pools. Authorities completed their investigation, citing multiple electrical safety breaches as the primary cause. Documentation included recorded footage, eyewitness testimonies, technical assessments, and coroner's determinations. It was September 8, 2015, when 21-year-old Cora Hill conducted a photo shoot on a pedestrian overpass above a major interstate in Phoenix, Arizona. Hill worked part-time at a retail store while building her modeling portfolio through social media. Her perfectionist personality and artistic eye had earned her 3,500 Instagram followers, who regularly engaged with her carefully composed photographs featuring dramatic urban backdrops. Hill had planned the shoot for golden hour lighting, which occurred between 6:20 and 6:40 p.m. local time during early September. She arrived at the uncaged pedestrian overpass wearing a flowing white dress and carrying a compact portable LED lighting panel and minimal camera accessories. The overpass featured a standard 4-foot concrete barrier designed to prevent accidental falls onto the busy interstate below. Hill was accompanied by her photographer friend, a 22-year-old college student who specialized in portrait photography. The photographer carried a DSLR camera, a portable LED lighting panel, and a tripod. Hill had previously scouted the location and identified a narrow exterior concrete lip, estimated by investigators to be less than a foot wide, that extended beyond the safety barrier, offering what she believed would create a dramatic floating effect in photographs. The overpass crossed the interstate at a height of approximately 25 feet above the roadway. Evening rush hour traffic moved steadily below at near-posted speeds, averaging between 55 and 65 miles per hour. Hill had researched similar photography locations through social media and believed the setup was manageable with proper precautions. Hill's photographer positioned a smartphone on a small clamp mount attached to the overpass railing to record behind-the-scenes footage of the shoot for later social media content. The phone captured a wide view of both the photography setup and the traffic patterns below. Hill climbed over the 4-foot barrier and carefully positioned herself on the narrow exterior ledge. The photographer began capturing long exposure shots designed to create light trails from the vehicle traffic below. The flowing fabric of Hill's dress was intended to create movement and visual interest in the photographs. During the shoot, desert wind conditions typical for the Phoenix area created gusts that channeled along the overpass structure. According to the photographer's witness account, a sudden gust caught Hill's dress fabric, creating the dramatic effect she wanted, but simultaneously affecting her balance on the narrow ledge. Hill attempted to adjust her foot positioning to compensate for the wind disturbance, but was already positioned at the very edge of the 8-inch ledge. The smartphone footage captured her losing balance and falling approximately 25 feet onto the active roadway below, landing within a live traffic lane. An SUV traveling in the right lane at approximately 65 miles per hour was unable to avoid Hill after she landed in the traffic path. The driver immediately applied emergency braking and attempted to steer toward the shoulder, but was unable to avoid the collision. The impact resulted in fatal blunt force trauma. Hill's photographer immediately called 911 while directing other drivers away from the scene. The smartphone continued recording until the photographer retrieved it as emergency responders arrived and established their own lighting at the scene. Multiple motorists also called emergency services, helping investigators establish a detailed timeline of the incident. Responders arrived within minutes and pronounced Hill dead at the scene. Traffic was shut down as investigators secured the roadway and documented the collision. Footage from the smartphone and the photographer's statement allowed authorities to reconstruct the fall and confirm wind-related balance loss. In the months that followed, safety reviews were conducted on pedestrian overpasses across the area, leading to higher barriers and added anti-climb fencing at the site. Officials classified the death as an accident caused by voluntary risk-taking during a photo shoot. Hill's family later established a scholarship promoting safety awareness in creative work. It was April 27, 2018, when late afternoon temperatures in Tucson, Arizona reached 89 degrees under partly cloudy skies. The second-floor apartment unit faced west, allowing direct sunlight to heat the narrow cooking area to approximately 85 degrees. The apartment kitchen was compact, with limited counter space and tight quarters. A bag of fresh red peppers sat on the counter, each one plump with thick walls and visible seeds. Lance Cooper, 23, worked as a stock clerk at a regional retail chain. Standing 6 feet 3 inches and weighing approximately 310 pounds, he possessed the heavy build of someone who relied on physical strength. Co-workers described him as competitive and pain-tolerant. His friends knew him as someone who turned his size into perceived advantages during group challenges, frequently claiming his larger lung capacity gave him superior endurance. This confidence had led him to accept increasingly difficult physical dares. 3 friends had gathered in the apartment to document what they called a heat endurance challenge. The rules required Lance to consume raw red peppers continuously without water breaks, while remaining seated and maintaining eye contact with the camera. One friend positioned a smartphone on the kitchen counter approximately 4 feet away, capturing a wide view of Lance seated at the dining table. A second friend held another smartphone closer to record his face and mouth. The peppers appeared fresh with bright red coloring and intact stems. Each contained visible seeds and white membrane structures that concentrate capsaicin oils. Lance had selected the largest pepper from the bag, measuring approximately 6 inches long. Lance gripped the pepper near its stem and bit deeply into the thick flesh, tearing off an irregular piece roughly 2 inches long. The action released capsaicin oils that immediately coated his mouth, tongue, and throat tissues. He continued chewing the pepper fragment while attempting to maintain eye contact with the recording devices. The capsaicin concentration triggered increased saliva production and involuntary coughing. While trying to swallow the partially chewed pepper piece quickly, a thick, irregular pepper fragment became wedged across the laryngeal inlet at the top of his airway, partially entering the glottic opening and blocking airflow. The irregular shape and fibrous texture created a significant obstruction. The foreign material triggered a laryngospasm, causing his vocal cords to reflexively tighten and worsen the obstruction created by the lodged pepper fragment. This protective reflex prevented any air from entering or leaving his lungs. Lance's larger body mass increased oxygen demand, accelerating the effects of oxygen deprivation once airflow was blocked. His hands moved instinctively to his throat as he realized he could not breathe. He stood abruptly from the dining chair, knocking it backward against the kitchen wall. His movements became increasingly frantic as he clawed at his neck and attempted to force air through the blocked airway. Excess saliva mixed with capsaicin oils pooled above the airway obstruction, further interfering with any attempt to inhale. Within approximately 1 minute of the initial choking, Lance's coordination began deteriorating as oxygen deprivation affected his brain function. His knees buckled and he collapsed forward and downward, striking the kitchen floor as his body went limp. He lost consciousness as his brain's oxygen supply became critically depleted. Both smartphone cameras continued recording throughout the incident, capturing Lance's collapse and subsequent lack of movement. His friends immediately called emergency services, but attempts to clear his airway were complicated by swelling, excess saliva, and the firmly lodged pepper fragment. Paramedics arrived within 7 minutes and found Lance unresponsive, apneic, and pulseless following prolonged oxygen deprivation. Advanced airway management techniques were attempted, but the prolonged oxygen deprivation had caused irreversible damage. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death as asphyxia due to foreign body airway obstruction with raw pepper material identified in the upper airway. Both recording devices captured the complete sequence from initial pepper consumption through Lance's collapse. The footage clearly documented the accidental nature of the incident. It was June 14, 2016, near midnight in downtown Phoenix, Arizona, where desert heat lingered on concrete surfaces inside a mostly empty 6-story parking garage. Vince Porter, 22, had just finished his warehouse loading shift at a distribution center on the city's industrial outskirts. Standing 5 feet 10 inches and weighing 175 pounds, he maintained the lean muscle mass of someone who moved freight boxes for 8 hours daily. His co-workers knew him as the type who turned routine tasks into competitions, timing himself against previous records and pushing physical limits others avoided. In recent weeks, that competitiveness had extended online, where short-form videos featuring distance jumps across parking garages had gained traction among local parkour groups. 2 friends met him at a downtown parking garage that had become an unofficial after-hours gathering spot for local climbers and skaters. The 6-story structure featured parallel deck sections connected by walkways, leaving open gaps between levels that ranged from 6 to 12 feet. Vince had successfully cleared several shorter spans in previous weeks, but that night he focused on a 9-foot gap between 4th-floor sections, approximately 65 feet above the asphalt below. The distance had been circulating online as a benchmark jump within a growing challenge trend. Desert winds had carried fine sand across the concrete throughout the day, leaving a thin layer over the worn yellow paint near the edge. The concrete lip showed years of weathering, with rounded corners and smooth wear patterns. One friend positioned himself on the opposite deck with a smartphone, while the other secured a small action camera to a metal guardrail, setting up clear angles to document the attempt for posting. Vince backed approximately 30 feet from the edge to build momentum for his sprint. The concrete showed scuff marks from previous attempts by other jumpers, though none had attempted this particular distance. He began his approach at a measured pace, accelerating as he neared the takeoff point. His running shoes struck the sand-dusted concrete with decreasing traction as he approached the rounded edge. The final step before takeoff occurred on the curved lip, where the sand layer was thickest. His right foot, intended as the primary launch point, slipped backward approximately 3 inches as it contacted the smooth, rounded surface. The reduced grip compromised his vertical lift component, converting what should have been an upward trajectory into a flatter arc. His body traveled horizontally across the gap, but began descending before reaching the opposite deck level. His chest struck the far deck's concrete corner with significant force, the impact audible to both friends. The collision fractured multiple ribs along his right side and immediately altered his body position from horizontal to head down. The momentum carried him over the edge as his hands failed to secure any grip on the smooth concrete surface. He fell vertically through the open space between garage levels, rotating slowly as he descended. The fall lasted roughly 2 seconds before his body struck the asphalt surface below. Impact caused catastrophic fractures to his legs, pelvis, and spine, with fatal internal injuries leaving him motionless after landing. Both cameras captured the slip, chest impact fall, and his motionless body on the asphalt below. Investigators later noted that the jump was not part of any sanctioned activity or training session, but an unsupervised attempt to complete a social media challenge that encouraged increasingly longer and higher-risk gap jumps. Emergency services arrived within 8 minutes of the call, but Vince showed no vital signs upon their assessment. The medical examiner's report confirmed multiple traumatic injuries, consistent with high-impact deceleration, with the primary cause of death listed as massive internal trauma resulting from the fall. The recorded footage provided clear documentation of the incident sequence, eliminating questions about the circumstances. Both cameras remained in the possession of responding officers as evidence. It was September 3, 2015, when heat shimmered over an industrial frontage road outside Amarillo, Texas, where traffic moved at speeds up to 55 miles per hour. The frontage road featured faded yellow centerline markings and cracked shoulders. Sparse vegetation and flat terrain created an unobstructed view for nearly a mile in each direction, giving drivers ample time to see approaching vehicles. Tate Maxwell, 24, worked as a delivery driver for a regional logistics company, spending his days navigating highways throughout the Texas Panhandle. He possessed the lean build of someone who loaded packages constantly. Co-workers described him as impulsive and competitive, often turning routine tasks into personal challenges. His familiarity with traffic patterns led him to believe the frontage road would carry minimal traffic during the late afternoon shift change. 3 friends had gathered to document what they termed a blindfolded road crossing challenge, inspired by similar stunts they had seen posted online. One friend operated a small consumer drone equipped with a camera, positioning it approximately 150 feet above the roadway. Another friend stood on the shoulder with a smartphone to record Tate's crossing attempt. Tate wrapped a dark bandana around his eyes, securing it tightly enough to block all vision. He tested his blindness by attempting to identify objects his friends held up, confirming complete visual obstruction. The plan involved sprinting diagonally across both lanes to reach the opposite shoulder. The drone footage showed the road appeared empty in both directions when Tate began his approach. He stepped onto the asphalt and immediately broke into a sprint, angling across the roadway at approximately 45 degrees to cover both lanes in the shortest distance. He sprinted at a fast pace, consistent with an adult male running at full effort as he moved from the near shoulder toward the center line. The blindfold remained securely in place, and his arm movement suggested he was counting steps to gauge his progress. Approximately 4 seconds into his crossing, a white box truck entered the visible area from the south, traveling at an estimated speed between 50 and 60 miles per hour. The vehicle's approach coincided with Tate reaching the centerline area, placing him directly in the truck's path. The truck driver appeared to apply brakes based on visible tire smoke, but the distance and speed made collision unavoidable. The front bumper struck Tate's left side as he continued his diagonal sprint, the impact lifting his body upward and forward onto the truck's hood. His head contacted the windshield with sufficient force to create a spiderweb pattern of cracks. The impact caused immediate cranial fractures and loss of consciousness. His body rolled forward off the hood as the truck continued its forward momentum. Tate landed on the pavement directly in front of the truck's path. At least one set of the vehicle's rear wheels passed over his torso. The crushing force collapsed his rib cage and caused immediate bilateral pneumothorax as both lungs were punctured. The massive internal trauma caused immediate cardiac arrest and respiratory failure. His body came to rest in the roadway as the truck continued approximately 200 feet before stopping. Emergency services received multiple calls from passing motorists and arrived within 12 minutes. Paramedics found Tate unresponsive with massive trauma consistent with being struck by a large vehicle. No vital signs were detected, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. The truck driver remained at the location, showed no signs of impairment, and cooperated fully with investigating officers. Skid marks on the pavement confirmed emergency braking had occurred prior to impact. The medical examiner's report listed multiple blunt force trauma as the cause of death, including severe head injuries, crushed chest cavity, and internal organ damage consistent with being struck and run over by a heavy vehicle. Both the drone footage and smartphone recording were retained as evidence. The recordings clearly documented the voluntary nature of the road crossing and the accidental circumstances. It was July 9, 2018, when afternoon temperatures in Riverside County, California reached 103 degrees under cloudless skies. The backyard swimming pool reflected intense sunlight, with water temperature measuring approximately 84 degrees. The rectangular pool measured 30 feet long and 15 feet wide, with a deep end that dropped to 8 feet. The residential property sat in a quiet subdivision where most neighbors remained indoors during peak heat hours. Pool equipment hummed quietly, circulating chlorinated water that appeared crystal clear to the bottom. Lana Perry, 17, had recently completed her junior year of high school, where she competed on the varsity swim team. Standing 5 feet 6 inches and weighing 125 pounds, she maintained the lean physique typical of competitive swimmers. Her teammates knew her as confident and technically skilled, particularly in underwater events requiring extended breath control. 6 friends had gathered for an informal summer party while parents remained absent. The group had seen various breath-holding challenges posted on social media and decided to attempt their own version using the pool's deep end. One friend positioned a smartphone on a poolside table to capture the deep end area. Another friend secured a small waterproof action camera to the pool wall, approximately 4 feet below the surface. The established rules involved submerging to the pool bottom and remaining motionless while holding breath for as long as possible. Participants were encouraged to push their limits until experiencing dizziness. Lana volunteered to attempt the first recorded trial, expressing confidence in her ability to exceed typical breath-holding durations based on her swimming background. She had previously held her breath for extended periods during training exercises, though always under supervised conditions. She entered the pool and swam to the deep end, positioning herself directly above the 8-foot depth marker. The underwater camera captured her descent as she exhaled partially and allowed herself to sink to the concrete bottom. She settled into a cross-legged sitting position. Her initial posture appeared relaxed and controlled, consistent with someone experienced in breath-holding techniques. The smartphone footage from above showed her motionless silhouette against the pool bottom. Just over a minute into the attempt, Lana's body language began showing subtle changes. Her shoulders appeared less rigid, and her head position shifted slightly forward. These early indicators of oxygen deprivation occurred gradually without dramatic warning signs. The underwater camera recorded the moment she lost consciousness, consistent with shallow water blackout. Her body suddenly slumped sideways from the sitting position, with her head tilting toward the pool bottom. The loss of consciousness happened without visible struggle. Within seconds of losing consciousness, an involuntary gasp reflex activated as her body attempted to restore oxygen levels. The automatic breathing response caused her to inhale a significant volume of chlorinated water directly into her lungs. The water aspiration triggered laryngospasm, rapidly compromising her airway and oxygen exchange. However, the initial water intake had already begun displacing oxygen in her alveoli, rapidly worsening her hypoxic condition. Her body remained motionless on the pool bottom as cardiac function became increasingly compromised. The poolside friends initially assumed her stillness indicated continued breath-holding effort. Recognition of the emergency occurred when her planned surfacing time passed without movement. One friend dove into the pool and brought her to the surface, finding her completely unresponsive. Emergency services received the call within 3 minutes of her removal from the water. Paramedics arrived to find CPR in progress, but Lana showed no response to resuscitation efforts. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner's autopsy confirmed drowning as the primary cause of death, with findings consistent with shallow water blackout followed by aspiration. Water was recovered from her lungs. Both recording devices captured the complete sequence from submersion through emergency response. The underwater footage clearly documented the moment of unconsciousness and subsequent water aspiration. It was November 18th, 2017, when overcast skies hung low over Joliet, Illinois, with temperatures hovering around 38 degrees Fahrenheit. The active freight rail crossing cut through a mixed commercial area, with tracks running in a gentle curve that compressed sight lines in both directions. Loose ballast stones surrounded the steel rails, creating uneven footing approximately 6 inches deep on either side of the track bed. Reed Austin, 26, worked at a local automotive detailing shop where he specialized in precision paint correction. Standing 5 feet 11 inches and weighing 165 pounds, he possessed the steady hands and attention to detail required for his trade. Co-workers described him as methodical and confident, particularly when executing tasks that required precise timing. His interest in timing-based challenges had developed through various online communities that documented similar stunts. Reed had researched local train schedules and observed several freight movements through this crossing over previous weeks, noting what he believed to be consistent speeds. He positioned a smartphone on a small tripod approximately 50 feet from the crossing, angling the camera to capture both the approaching track and his planned position between the rails. Reed's plan involved standing directly between the rails and timing how long he could remain in position before an approaching train forced him to step aside. He had calculated what he believed to be safe margins based on his previous observations. Weather conditions provided clear visibility, though the gentle curve limited sight distance to approximately 800 feet toward the south, where trains typically approached. Reed positioned himself between the rails, facing the direction of expected train approach. The smartphone recording captured him checking his watch and settling into position. He stood with feet planted on the wooden ties, maintaining balance on the uneven surface created by the ballast stones. Approximately 3 minutes into his timing attempt, distant vibrations became detectable through the steel rails. The locomotive's approach created increasing track resonance that Reed could feel through his feet. As the train rounded the curve and became visible, Reed appeared to realize the locomotive was traveling faster than anticipated. Reed stepped backward to exit the track area, but his left foot caught in the gap between the rail and a wooden tie. The loose ballast stones shifted under his weight, causing him to lose balance and fall forward across the rail closest to the approaching locomotive. His attempts to free his trapped foot were unsuccessful due to the unstable ballast surface and the awkward angle created by his fall. The locomotive's engineer applied emergency braking, but the distance and speed made collision unavoidable. The locomotive struck Reed at full speed while he remained partially across the rail. The impact caused traumatic amputation of the lower body. The upper portion of his body was thrown laterally from the track bed, traveling an estimated 20 to 30 feet before striking the gravel surface. The massive kinetic energy transfer caused immediate fatal trauma to his chest and head upon secondary impact. The locomotive continued past the crossing for approximately 400 feet before stopping. The smartphone camera captured the entire sequence from Reed's initial positioning through the collision. The recording clearly documented his foot becoming trapped, his fall across the rail, and the subsequent impact. Emergency services received multiple calls from nearby residents who heard the train's emergency braking and collision. First responders arrived within 8 minutes to find Reed's body in 2 separate locations consistent with the high-speed impact. The locomotive engineer cooperated fully with investigating officers. Railroad personnel confirmed the train had been operating within posted speed limits. The medical examiner's report listed massive blunt force trauma as the cause of death. The examination confirmed the injuries were immediately fatal. The smartphone recording was retained as evidence. The footage clearly showed the accidental nature of Reed's entrapment and the timing miscalculation that led to the fatal collision. Railroad investigators concluded the incident was accidental, resulting from an unauthorized person on active tracks who became trapped due to unstable footing conditions. It was June 4, 2019, in downtown Los Angeles. The sun had not fully risen yet, and the streets below were quiet except for early traffic and delivery trucks. An office building under renovation stood dark, with temporary fencing and warning signs posted at street level. The rooftop was unfinished, with sections of guardrails removed as crews prepared for new materials to arrive later that morning. Daniel Cruz, 24, entered the building through an unsecured stairwell just after 5:30 a.m. He worked evenings at a car wash and spent his free time filming parkour and urban exploration videos. His social media page had a little over 3,000 followers. He was not sponsored and had no formal training. His recent videos had been getting fewer views than before, and people close to him said he had been looking for something bigger to post. Daniel had visited the location twice in the weeks leading up to that morning. Two office buildings stood across from each other, separated by a narrow service alley. From roof to roof, the horizontal gap measured just over 11 feet. Temporary renovation work had left both rooftops uneven. Loose gravel, dust, and small debris were scattered across the surface. He carried two small action cameras and his phone. After reaching the roof, Daniel placed one camera near the edge and another farther back to capture his run-up. He did not clear the gravel from the path. Instead, he adjusted the angles several times, stepping back and forth to check the framing. At the same time, a small construction crew arrived at the neighboring building. Two workers were on a lower rooftop preparing tools and inspecting equipment. From their position, they could see Daniel moving around on the opposite roof. One later said it was obvious he did not belong there. Daniel began pacing out his approach. He measured roughly 30 feet from the edge, walking it several times. He made multiple practice runs, accelerating toward the gap and stopping at the last second. The workers noticed his shoes slipping slightly during these attempts as gravel shifted underfoot. After several minutes, Daniel repositioned the camera again. He backed up to the start of his run and stood still for a short time. Witnesses said he appeared focused on the setup rather than the surface beneath him. On the final attempt, Daniel sprinted faster than before. As he reached the last few feet, his lead foot landed on loose gravel. The stones shifted forward and his foot slid just enough to throw off his balance. His takeoff was late and lower than intended. Daniel partially cleared the gap but struck the far building chest first just below the roofline. One worker described the sound as heavy and flat, not sharp. Daniel's upper body hit the wall and his arms came up briefly before he fell backward into the alley. As he fell, Daniel struck a metal fixture mounted to the building several stories down. The impact changed his position before he continued falling. The workers ran to the edge and shouted, but could not see the ground clearly from where they stood. Daniel was later found in the alley below, unresponsive. His phone was recovered near the edge of the roof where he had set it to record. Paramedics arrived shortly after and confirmed that he had sustained fatal blunt force trauma consistent with a high fall impact. The footage on the device showed his run-up, the slip at takeoff, and the moment his body left the frame. No video of the landing was captured. Within days, permanent safety barriers were installed on both rooftops involved. Daniel's social media account stopped updating, and the footage from that morning was never posted or shared publicly. It was August 7, 2018, when 26-year-old Nina Wright and her boyfriend Marcus began their descent into a remote side canyon in northern Arizona toward a high-volume waterfall known locally as Twin Vale Falls. Nina worked as a marketing coordinator for a technology company while maintaining a small travel blog with approximately 3,800 Instagram followers. Her content focused on adventure destinations, and she had been planning the trip for months after seeing viral videos of people swimming near large, powerful waterfalls. The waterfall dropped roughly 180 feet into a narrow plunge pool and was experiencing unusually high flow due to recent monsoon storms. Warning signs had been posted along the trail about dangerous conditions, but Nina was determined to create content that would stand out from typical tourist photos. She carried a waterproof action camera and had convinced Marcus to film her attempt to swim in the plunge pool below the falls. The nearly 8-mile descent into the canyon took most of the day. Other backpackers they encountered warned about the strong currents, but Nina remained focused on her planned shoot. Marcus expressed concerns about the water conditions throughout their approach, noting the unusual volume and turbulence visible from the trail. Nina set up her waterproof camera on a stable rock ledge overlooking the pool and began recording continuous video intended for later upload, occasionally speaking toward the camera as if addressing her audience. The plunge pool was estimated to be roughly 40 feet across, with depths believed to exceed 30 feet near the base. The recirculating hydraulic created by the falling water was clearly visible as a churning white zone directly beneath the cascade. Nina entered the water wearing a standard life jacket and initially stayed near the calmer edges of the pool. The recorded footage later reviewed showed her gradually moving closer to the turbulent center, despite Marcus signaling from shore for her to maintain distance. When Nina reached the hydraulic zone, the powerful recirculating current immediately pulled her underwater. The turbulence forced the improperly secured life jacket up over her shoulders, rendering it ineffective within seconds, and she became trapped in the washing machine effect, created by a massive volume of water falling continuously. The hydraulic held her in a continuous cycle of being pulled down and pushed back toward the base of the falls. Marcus attempted to reach her from the rocky shoreline, but could not safely enter the dangerous current. Two other hikers who witnessed the incident also tried to assist but were unable to approach the hydraulic zone without risking their own safety. Nina remained trapped in the hydraulic for a short period before her body was eventually released downstream. By the time bystanders could reach her in the calmer water, she had drowned. The recovered footage showed the entire sequence from her entry into the pool until she disappeared beneath the surface. Marcus activated his satellite emergency communicator immediately after the incident. Due to the remote location, backcountry access restrictions, and monsoon weather conditions, aerial recovery operations were delayed for several hours. Recovery teams retrieved Nina's body from the pool using specialized swift water rescue equipment. The camera continued recording unattended after the incident until its battery failed. The footage was later secured and never publicly released. Authorities later reviewed the incident and classified it as an accidental drowning. The official report noted that Nina had entered a known hydraulic hazard despite posted warnings and adverse conditions. Her waterproof camera provided crucial evidence about the sequence of events leading to her death. Following the incident, park authorities enhanced warning signage about hydraulic dangers and implemented additional safety briefings for backcountry permits. The case highlighted the risks associated with swimming near high-volume waterfalls, particularly during periods of elevated flow. It was June 22, 2018, in Riverside County, California. The early afternoon was warm and dry as freight trains moved through a rural stretch of track that cut across rolling hills. The rail line curved through the terrain, limiting visibility in both directions. Low brush and dirt embankments lined the tracks, and the shape of the land reduced how early approaching trains could be seen or heard. Adam Perry was 19 years old. He worked part-time at an electronics store and spent much of his free time building a photography portfolio online. His page had roughly 4,200 followers. Adam focused on dramatic images taken in places that looked raw or dangerous. He believed those settings made his work stand out. Friends said he often searched for locations that most people avoided. Adam chose the rail line after scouting it on previous visits. He knew freight trains used the track regularly, but there was no posted schedule. Train movement depended on dispatch and traffic farther up the line. Adam relied only on what he had observed before and believed there would be enough warning time if a train approached. That afternoon, Adam arrived with his friend Jake, who agreed to help with the shoot. Adam brought a professional camera, extra lenses, and a shoulder bag with his equipment. The plan was to take a series of photos that framed the curve of the track stretching into the hills. At first, Jake posed several feet away from the rails while Adam photographed from the gravel shoulder. As the session continued, Adam adjusted his angles and stepped closer. He climbed onto the railroad ties to lower his camera position. Jake moved as directed, standing near the edge of the track while Adam worked. Adam's camera strap hung across his chest, connected to the equipment bag at his side. Neither of them had any protective gear or lookout system in place. The area was quiet except for wind moving through the brush. Because of the curve in terrain, sound carried unevenly. Jake was the first to notice movement down the line. From his position, he saw the front of a freight locomotive appear around the bend. Jake immediately shouted and waved to get Adam's attention. Adam was looking through the camera viewfinder and did not respond at first. He was focused on framing the shot and adjusting his position. When Adam finally looked up, the train was already much closer. It was moving at authorized freight speed and closing distance quickly. Adam turned to clear the tracks, stepping back toward the gravel shoulder. As he moved, the camera strap caught on his equipment bag, pulling him slightly off balance. The delay lasted only seconds. Adam stumbled and failed to clear the rails completely. The train engineer, seeing Adam on the track, applied emergency brakes immediately and sounded the horn. The train could not slow enough in the remaining distance. Adam was struck while still on the tracks. The impact caused fatal injuries. Jake witnessed the collision from nearby and remained clear of the rail line as the train passed. After the train came to a stop farther down the track, Jake called for help while staying clear of the rails. The train crew remained on site until the area was secured and rail traffic could resume safely. Adam's camera and damaged equipment were recovered near the ties where he had been standing moments earlier. The memory card inside the camera was intact and showed the progression of the shoot, including how close Adam had positioned himself to the active track before the train appeared around the curve. Service on the rail line resumed later that day. Adam's online accounts were never updated again, and the photographs taken during the session were never posted or shared publicly. It was September 14, 2018, when 24-year-old Elena Young arrived at a rocky coastal cliff area near San Diego with her two-person camera crew for what she planned as her most ambitious content creation yet. Elena worked as a yoga instructor at a wellness center while building her fitness influencer brand with about 3,500 followers across multiple platforms. Her competitive nature and drive to create increasingly extreme content had been escalating over recent months as she faced pressure from younger influencers entering her space. Elena had spent weeks researching cliff diving locations and studying tide charts for this specific shoot. The rocky coastline in the area featured dramatic 60 to 70-foot drops into the Pacific Ocean, but the area was known for its unpredictable underwater rock formations and variable water depths depending on tidal conditions. Her crew consisted of a videographer and a drone operator, both experienced in outdoor content creation. They arrived during low tide conditions, which Elena had specifically chosen under the mistaken belief that it would provide clearer water visibility for her footage. However, the low tide also significantly reduced water depth over the submerged rock shelves below the cliffs. Elena set up multiple camera angles, including a drone positioned to capture aerial footage of her planned dive. She began live streaming to several hundred viewers, many of whom encouraged her to attempt the jump from the highest accessible point. The live stream footage later recovered by investigators showed Elena discussing her plan to dive from approximately 70 feet above the water. A surfer paddling in the nearby break observed Elena's preparations and later told authorities he had considered warning her about the shallow conditions, but was too far away to communicate effectively. Several beachwalkers on the bluff trail also witnessed the setup but did not intervene. Elena executed what appeared to be a technically sound dive, entering the water feet first after a brief fall lasting only a few seconds. However, the low tide had significantly reduced the water depth in her landing zone, where submerged rock shelves and boulders lay just beneath the surface. Her feet struck the underwater rock formation at high velocity, causing severe injuries to her lower extremities and spine. The impact immediately impaired her ability to swim or maintain buoyancy. Elena submerged and was unable to surface on her own due to her injuries. The surfer who had been watching paddled toward the impact site, but required significant time to fight lateral surge and reach the area where Elena had gone under. By the time he located her underwater, she had already drowned. He brought her to accessible rocks with assistance from bystanders who had climbed down from the cliff trail. Emergency responders arrived shortly after the initial rescue efforts began, but resuscitation attempts were unsuccessful. Elena was pronounced dead at the scene. The drone footage captured the entire sequence from her dive through the rescue attempts, providing investigators with substantial visual documentation. The live stream continued briefly after the incident, capturing emergency response efforts before platform administrators terminated the feed following viewer reports. The footage revealed that Elena had not adequately assessed the water depth or identified the submerged hazards in her chosen landing zone. County medical examiners determined the cause of death as drowning secondary to traumatic injuries sustained during impact with underwater rocks. The official report noted that low tide conditions had created a hazardous situation that Elena had not properly evaluated. Following the incident, local authorities installed additional warning signage about variable water depths and underwater hazards at popular cliff areas. Patrol frequency was increased during peak weekend hours when cliff jumping activity typically occurred. The case prompted discussions within the influencer community about safety protocols for extreme content creation. Elena's death highlighted the risks associated with cliff diving in unfamiliar locations without a proper assessment of underwater conditions and tidal variations. It was November 3, 2019, when 21-year-old Blake Cooper entered carrying 40 pounds of camera equipment for his urban exploration documentation. Blake worked night shifts at a warehouse while creating content for around 4,700 subscribers during daylight hours. His methodical personality and attention to architectural details had earned him a reputation among urban exploration enthusiasts for thorough, well-researched videos. The 12-story hotel had been condemned for over 15 years following multiple fires and extensive water damage. City inspectors had scheduled a final structural assessment for the following week before planned demolition. Blake had researched the building's history extensively and identified specific areas of architectural interest for his planned rooftop sunset shoot. Blake's girlfriend expected regular text updates throughout his exploration, a safety protocol they had established after previous incidents in the urban exploration community. He had also informed her of his planned return time and vehicle location as standard practice for solo explorations. Blake began his ascent methodically, testing floor stability with a metal rod and documenting each level with his handheld camera. The lower floors showed typical signs of abandonment, but remained structurally sound. As he progressed higher, fire damage became more extensive, with missing interior walls and visible concrete deterioration. By the 8th floor, Blake encountered significant structural compromise. Years of water infiltration had corroded reinforcing steel, causing concrete delamination and significantly reducing the slab's load-bearing capacity. Despite these warning signs, Blake continued toward his target location near the exterior windows where he planned to capture city views. Blake's camera was recording when he stepped onto what appeared to be a stable concrete slab near the building's exterior wall. The section, weakened by years of water damage and fire exposure, suddenly failed under his weight. The initial collapse caused Blake to fall through the failed floor slab and impact weakened sections below, triggering additional localized failures rather than a full progressive collapse. Blake fell through multiple weakened floors as each level failed under the impact and debris load. The collapse progressed downward until reaching a partially intact slab on the 5th floor where the failures stopped. When Blake failed to send his scheduled check-in message and did not return by his planned time, his girlfriend contacted authorities. Police located his vehicle outside the abandoned building and requested urban search and rescue teams to conduct a systematic search of the structure. Rescue teams used listening devices and visual inspections to search the collapsed section, though heavy debris significantly limited search effectiveness. The recovery operation required heavy equipment to safely remove concrete debris without causing additional structural instability. Blake was located under the rubble approximately 18 hours after the collapse, and he was pronounced deceased at the scene. Investigators recovered Blake's camera equipment from the debris field. While most devices were destroyed, a backup memory card survived and contained footage leading up to the structural failure. The video showed Blake's approach to the compromised section and documented the moment the floor gave way beneath him. The medical examiner determined that Blake died from multiple traumatic injuries consistent with a multi-story fall and impact from falling debris. The structural failure had occurred too rapidly for any survival response. City engineers conducted an emergency assessment of the building following the incident and accelerated demolition plans due to the demonstrated structural instability. Blake's death prompted the urban exploration community to develop enhanced safety protocols, including stronger recommendations for partner systems and remote check-in protocols during building explorations. The incident prompted increased security measures at several high-risk abandoned properties identified by city officials, including improved fencing and regular patrols to deter unauthorized access. The recovered footage was later referenced in safety discussions within the urban exploration community to demonstrate how quickly structural failures can occur in compromised buildings. Authorities concluded that the combination of fire damage, water infiltration, and steel corrosion had created an unpredictable failure point that appeared stable but could not support normal loads. The collapse demonstrated how localized structural failures can propagate vertically through compromised buildings. Thanks for watching. Want to watch more? Click on your screen now.